And the half-life of the other ones are, sufficient, like iodine is about 8 days. And so a lot of that is going to be deactivated by the time it floats up the current. But nevertheless, the fish, that eat that stuff, we're going to still see some higher levels in Japanese. I wouldn't be buying any sushi in the future. And I'd be careful that we monitor the Pacific salmon, which is our richest crop coming out of Alaska, as well as, actually about three-fourths of all of our best fish in the West Coast comes from Alaskan waters, and we've got to watch that.
Well, I respect your views, and I hope you're right on all of this, but it's a dire situation, but a little less worse in my mind after talking to you. Let's shift gears, though. Why have you been focused for so long on the nuclear threat, on strategic relocation? Was it because you noticed a leech getting prepared a long time ago? We're about to go to break, but give us a synopsis ahead of going into more detail on strategic relocation.
Well, my concern, of course, is strategic relocation is the major threat to all of us is population density. I mean, look at what's happened. I can still get the products that I eat out here in areas which don't have high population densities, but anybody trying to get potassium iodide or radiation detectors or anything in the survival preparedness community, even food in a major metropolis like the Los Angeles area, or even Austin, Texas, where you are, is just out of luck. Massive densities of people is your biggest threat because in any crisis, it simply strips the supply clean within a day, and you're stuck. So many people panicking. I just want to mention, too, even though you should be trying to get potassium iodide stockpiled, don't be taking it now.
Absolutely.
You're wasting it. In other words, save it for a time when there actually is radiation in the air. And as I tried to tell in my World Affairs brief a couple of weeks ago, remember, just keep it from getting ingested into your lungs. Wear a mask. Have a respirator. It doesn't even have to be a gas mask. Just one of these paint respirators that's $30 from Home Depot is sufficient to stop any of that to getting into your lungs. Don't make sure you use filtered water. Get a big Berkey. And make sure that you don't ingest it, and then it's not as dangerous and not a problem.
But the bottom line is, you get 37 million people in Tokyo, 30-plus million Mexico City, 10 million Los Angeles metro, 14 million New York metro. All of this going on, human populations themselves are a bomb. A few weeks after one of these disasters, because even in Japan, they're very well behaved and ordered, they're running out of food, they're running out of water, people are starting to get angry. And so let's talk about the real threats, what we're facing, strategic relocation. Your presentation begins, and I'm going to give you the floor pretty much on the other side. Short segment coming up, then an 18-minute segment. We'll go a little bit into overdrive today with Joel Skousen to have time to finish this.
Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
Okay, this is just something a little experimental for radio and TV. We're going to do a slideshow presentation, PowerPoint. A lot of what's covered in the book, Strategic Relocation, North American Guide to Safe Places, but Joel will be describing it for radio listeners as well. But I do suggest you get this incredible color book with all the maps and diagrams and documents. He's done an incredible research. And then later, towards the end of the hour, we'll talk about, in just a general scope, some of the foreign areas in the world from his research of nuclear war threats and other disaster threats, the safest places to live. But the overall driving issue is don't live in a big city. Joel Skousen, this is a short segment, but please begin your presentation. You have the floor.
Well, thanks, Alex. Let's first of all switch from the cover to the main question of what do we mean by strategic relocation. There's all kinds of relocation guides out there that talk about the best golf courses and the best hospital care and the best retirement homes and recreation and warm, sunny climates. That's why Arizona and Florida grew, like hotcakes over the year. But unlike all these other books, this guide not only teaches you or does not teach you where to buy the best home and the best school districts and, where the best shopping is. Strategic relocation was specifically written to help people like Alex Jones listeners to make assessments about strategic safety of the places that they live in the long term. That's the most important thing when a person thinks about his life and where he should live. Other than the fact that you've got to make a living, you've got to understand where's the best long-term security. There's going to be a playoff because most people can't live in the most secure locations. Because in the most secure locations, you very rarely can make a living. And that's one of the reasons why, when people ask me, they call me up all the time, well, tell me where the safe place is. And I tell them, there is no exactly safe place. because most of the time you can't make a living in a safe place. And so there's lots of these things. That's why this is a complex subject. I take people through all of these things. And we have these illusions of peace and prosperity, even despite, foreign wars going on to Americans. Most of this is way, way far away. It's not going to touch us. I'm here to say that it's going to touch us someday, and it's going to start touching us now, especially economically. The economic foundations of the U.S. and the world are all based upon fiat money, and they're crumbling. The bailouts and more debt, whether in Europe or the United States, merely postpone the inevitable default. They do not stop it. I'm convinced it cannot be stopped, in fact. Default through collapse or through war is inevitable, in my opinion. Now, I think they'll choose war before collapse and use it as an excuse to start over with the world currency and a new debt cycle. They frankly cannot tax enough to pay the kinds of things they're doing. They must use debt and the commensurate inflation of our money supply, which is the deflation of our buying power. Well, continual intervention in other countries like Libya will invite eventual military backlash from Russia and China. I'm one of the foremost spokesmen of 2 or 3 in the country that believe that Russia and China are not allies, that they're not friendly, that they will not be contained by trade, that they in fact are and have been attempting or planning to strike the West and will do so at some point. And we seem to be handing them the excuse. But in any major crisis, as I mentioned, as Alex mentioned, your biggest enemy will be high-density concentrations of people, crippled supply lines, and crippled infrastructure. It will guarantee widespread social unrest and panic within a day, and even good people will have no other choice but to go scavenging for food, and that's what makes a defense nightmare when you're looking at good people who come rummaging through your property, you're looking for something, and you simply won't be shooting and defending yourself in that way or in an aggressive way against good people. You've got to simply get out of the mainstream, get out of the maelstrom, either by having concealed spaces, which we talk about in strategic relocation, or getting out of town, hopefully, and being positioned so that you can get out before this happens. Don't be on the attempting to make the last train out, as Gary North used to talk about so much. So what's new about this 3rd edition? Well, the 3rd edition is a complete rework of the previous 2 editions of the book. And not only has updated information for 2010, but entirely revised content and layout. Almost 3/4 of the text is new. The most significant changes in this edition include a new worldwide analysis of countries around the world, state and province-specific reviews of the U.S. and Canada, and dozens of new maps and tables to make information more accessible, easy to use. In fact, I added 200 new pages with not only an individual analysis of each state and a rating, but a complete color map showing everything about it, which we'll show you some pictures later on in the presentation if you're watching on Prison Planet TV, of all of the land use within these states and the military targets, et cetera.
All right, now we've got just about 30 minutes left. On the other side, we'll go a little bit into overdrive, but we're going to come back. You'll have the floor, and we'll launch into the presentation from your deep research. And folks, again, can get the book, Strategic Relocation, North American Guide to Safe Places, 3rd edition, at Infowars.com. He's about to be out of print until he gets more printed. Get yours today. I know I've got mine. Doing a radio/TV simulcast, going through a PowerPoint presentation that breaks down the book, Strategic Relocation, North American Guide to Safe Places, 3rd edition, with Joel M. Skousen. Joel, please continue.
Well, there are 4 major sections to this book. Selecting a safe country is the first section. That's a new section where we actually, just by popular demand, people keep calling me, I've got to get out of here because of all the threats to America, and I want to go to a safe place, and I'll discuss that in a minute. Section 2 is analysis of North America. Section 3, strategies for security. And North America is Canada, and the United States is what I concentrate on. That's where most of our audience is, and most of my study and work has been in designing safe homes around North America. Number 3, Section 3, strategies for security and relocation. One of the most important sections, what makes this different than anybody else's analysis, is the fact that there is no real safe place for everyone. And every place has some compromise. Every place has some down things, and so there's a tremendous amount of compromise, modification, contingency planning, 2 or 3 steps that you've got to do to prepare yourself. And I cover this very interesting subject in that whole section. And then the fourth section is where you wrap it all together and make your choices of state and regional analysis, where I go through region by region and show the strong points and the weak points of various regions. And hopefully by then a person says, all right, I want this state or this state or this state. And then in that last section, I've got the color maps of every state with all of the targets.